Welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Let's start off with the big Turning Points USA Student Action Summit, the SAS. Let's just call it the American Nazi Youth Conference for short. This is where all of the insaniacs the Republican Party got together for their little hate fest. Very interesting weekend, very interesting little song and dance by all of the usual suspects. Lauren Boebert had her WWE moment, flashing lights, flames. I got to tell you, no one puts on a hate fest quite like our friends in the GOP. Very, very well funded, well choreographed, lots of hate. And I look at Matt Gaetz, who allegedly, I'm going to throw the alleged, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he is innocent until proven guilty, but lots of allegations about his, paying underage girls for sex and cross borders kind of stuff and drug this and that. Lots of stuff. Audacity to stand up and point his finger at the people protesting to want to maintain their rights to do with their body what they choose. He called them odious and ugly and said that the women who are against abortion are the ones who want abortions are ones that, how did he put it exactly, are the ones no one would want to impregnate because they look like a thumb, according to him. Now, this is a little midget of a guy who's spouting off about people with a giant forehead. Looks like one of either Beavis or Butthead, but he's going to talk about other people. He went on to say these are odious people inside and out. They're like 5'2", 350. He talks about they should go on marches. And I'm going, this is a guy who someone needs to. Where's Will Smith when you need him? But this was kind of the whole weekend there at the Nazi Hate Fest, where you had Marjorie Three Names, Taylor Greene, giving a little side spew, talking about how this is a Christian nationalist country. She forgot the white part, but you knew what she meant because there were a lot of white people there. It was a very white ordeal. She said, we need to be the party of nationalism. I'm a Christian, and I say it proudly. We should be Christian nationalists. Yeah. And again, she believes that the rest of us, the entire country, that she represents everyone, that she represents the majority. And this is where the silent majority of people who put up with and tolerate these religious zealots, these extremists, these people who for years we've tolerated. And I'm guilty of it as well. I've told stories of, being in a restaurant and having somebody in the most obnoxious of ways have their performative prayer in front of everybody for everyone to see. And just going, do we need that? Is that really what was called for? And no, what it is it's imposing their beliefs and their faith and their will upon everyone else. And this is basically what these folks want. And as I've always said, this is where the fun is going to be. And I've said this for years. Where the fun is going to be is once we've officially staked the flag in the ground, that we are a Christian nation. None of those other ones. None of those others. That's when the fun's going to start. That's when they're going to start eating each other because you're not pure enough. And we're seeing this. We saw this at the Hate Fest. The purity, the absolute inline. And Trump's a big part of this. If you're not absolutely, totally pure, you're out. For instance, the guy who's the head of Gab, a Doug Mastriano supporter and advisor or whatever he is. I guess Mastriano gave him money. For those who don't know, Doug Mastriano, I believe, is a Nazi. He is running for governor in the state of Pennsylvania as a Republican. Has the most extreme agenda possible. Would take us back to the Stone Age, but that's an argument for another day. Their agenda, so insane. This guy said that he doesn't want the Jewish commentators who are in their corner, who are solidly behind, doesn't want them until they repent and become crazy like them. This again is where we're heading, folks. And look, you may agree with them on certain policies, you may be in this camp, but you're not pure. You're never going to be pure. You're never going to fit the bill. You're not. And eventually, when they've used you up, and they're going to discard you, they're going to throw you under the bus. And this is interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, the Hate Fest went on. It was a weekend-long shindig. Some rich people paid for it, as they always do. And they're always good for some hilarity. For instance, as I said, Lauren Boebert came in on her big WWE moment with the flames and the music and all kinds of stimulus and lights a flashing. It was entertaining. I give her credit, entertaining. Give the people who put it on. They put on a good show. She had a comment that contrary to popular belief, she said, I have never been an escort for a Senator Ted Cruz, but I will tell you tonight, she said, it's the coolest thing I've heard about Ted Cruz. So I heard her that clip and I played it a couple of times over and over, and she says I've never been an escort for a Senator Ted Cruz. In my mind, what is these are very specific words she's chosen. Is it she meant to say I've never been an escort for a senator? And then go, oh, gee, there was that one time. I better qualify this and say for Ted Cruz. Maybe. But she goes on to say, well, the coolest thing, is that's the coolest thing I've heard about Ted Cruz. And the thing is Ted Cruz is so uncool that paying a prostitute could, quite frankly, be the coolest thing about him. I don't know. Now, look, I'm not shaming people who work in the sex trade. That's your thing. God bless you. I wish you the best. I think it should be legal. I think it should be safe. I think all of that. But interesting from our hypocrisy crowd, because obviously these are the people who are the ones who preach to us about how we should live our lives, telling us that evidently this is the coolest thing. Coolest thing. Yeah. Gun fetish Barbie. But I got to tell you, I think the funniest thing and the most bizarre thing and the scariest thing and the most unsurprising thing was Donald Trump, who was there because anytime there's a crowd of crazy people, he's got to give his long-winded, boring, wandering, meandering spiel. His hit piece was, I quote, as president, I wanted to give myself the Congressional Medal of Honor, but they wouldn't let me do it. They wouldn't let me do it. I said, I'm going to give it to myself. I'm going to give myself the Congressional Medal of Honor. I've always wanted that. They said it would be inappropriate. I think there have only been like 300 Congressional Medals of Honor ever handed out. I mean, we're talking... One, I think you have to be in the military or have been in the military. I think that's a key component of it. You got to, and you've got to have done something kind of heroic. Just kind of throwing that out there. This is a big freaking deal. And to just willy-nilly go, I've always wanted one. They look pretty cool. They go nice with orange. Could fit with my red tie. The fact that he would say that out loud shows just what he thinks of all the little Nazis who aren't really paying attention to what he's saying. They just, oh my gosh, there's our cult leader. He also went on to another little bit of insight into his head. He told all of the little Nazis in the crowd that he kind of liked it when the Taliban leader called him Your Excellence. I just and I'm still struggling with. He could even be swayed by the Taliban, who just would talk nice to him, would praise him. And the right will go after Joe Biden for getting our people the hell out of there. I mean, it's kind of a weird world. Now, the interesting thing is these people are telling you exactly who they are. You've got the Marjorie Trader Greene saying, "Hey, you know, we're a Christian nationalist country. We don't care about any other religions." You got Bimbo Barbie over there going, "Hey, I wasn't an escort for Ted Cruz, but it was a cool thing if he was buying people and doing that." You got Trump going, wanting to steal valor, and then you've got J.D. Vance, who wants to be a senator from Ohio, going, we should force people to stay in unhappy marriages. Because, for the kids' sake, even if they're violent, even if the husband's, beating the wife, they should stay. Because remember, Ohio is a rape state. Ohio is a marital rape state. Perfectly legal. No. Yes. If you're married, no such thing. Look it up. But Vance went on to say that one of the greatest tricks, I think, of the sexual revolution pulled on American populace, which is the idea that, these marriages were fundamentally, they were maybe violent, but they certainly were unhappy. And so get rid of them and make it easier for people to shift spouses, like changing their underwear. They're going to make people happier in the long term. And he adds, and maybe it worked out for the moms and dads, though I'm skeptical, but it really didn't work out for the kids of those marriages. Now, we don't know that. I personally think if you're unhappy and you're married and you're fighting all the time, that ain't good for the kids. It's better if you're gone. And that. Find somebody that's going to make you happy, lead something of a functional life. But this is the worldview. Keep those women in their place. Make their worth their uterus. All they're good for is pumping out little units and baking pie. And control. Can't go anywhere, can't do anything. No more credit cards for you women, no jobs for you. This is the future. And look, they're not ashamed of saying it. Listen to what they are saying. It's scary, scary stuff. And look, the sad reality is their hypocrisy never comes with a price tag. As I've been saying, this stuff won't affect them. It's only you and me, the working people. For instance, and I give you a for instance, Glenn Thompson, Republican representative from the state of Pennsylvania. Glenn Thompson evidently went to his gay son's wedding over the weekend. They were married in a same-sex wedding. That's right. The congressman and his wife both attended their son's wedding. And the spokesperson for the congressman said the congressman and Mrs. Thompson were thrilled to attend and celebrate their son's marriage on Friday night as he began this new chapter in his life. They were very happy, very happy. And you go, very happy, but you just voted against. You voted against the Respect Marriage Act. You just voted against the same-sex marriage act. You just voted against this, Glenn. How can you then be thrilled? How can you then go, "Oh, that's okay"? How can you do that? Well, the reality is it's not going to affect you. It's the same thing on the abortion front. They're pushing all of this stuff going, it's not going to affect my family because we're going to have the resources to be able to take our kids where we want to. We're going to be able to do what we want. It's scary. It's frightening. And I'm telling you, these people are dangerous. Republicans hate working people. It's that simple. But we got lots to get to, lots to talk about. Going to take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com labor.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's been 13 years. 13 years ago yesterday was the last time we raised the minimum wage in this country. And there is virtually nowhere in the United States where you can afford to rent an apartment in this country living on minimum wage. And look, they know that. You want to talk about wage theft? Happens every day as we cheat people out of a respectable living. It's the old, hey, if I could pay you less, I would. And, you know, if you remember, you go back to a number of years ago when Ron Paul was running for president saying, you know, we're against the minimum wage. You know, if people are willing to work for $1 an hour, that's what it should be. Remember, every Republican voted against the minimum wage, and a number of Democrats are against it as well. There are no Republicans who are supporting a reasonable minimum wage increase. Again, I go back to my basic premise. Republicans hate working people. Let's go to the phone lines. We've got Kurt on line one. Kurt, how are we doing today?
Well, Rick, how are you tonight?
Living the dream, my brother.
Well, just remember this about the minimum wage. Remember what Harry Truman said in 1948 about the Republicans and minimum wage?
What was that?
They're for a minimum wage. The more minimumer, the better.
I forgot all about that. That's a good one.
Yeah, and that was when he actually took the Republican Party platform of 1948 and said, the Republican Party says that they're for this, and I'm going to read you what they say they're for, but this is what they're not doing anything about it. And he was talking about the health care, the housing, public education, Social Security. Oh, by the way, remember they wanted to extend Social Security in those days, but they took 750,000 Americans off Social Security in order to save it.
Yeah, it's that old we have to kill it in order to save it mentality. Yep. Exactly.
But the reason I called, and I had your screener, I think she peed her pants when I was talking to her because she was laughing so hard.
I hope not. I got to clean that mess up then.
But Donald Trump wanting a Congressional Medal of Honor, and like I told your screener, I said, Audie Murphy can get a Congressional Medal of Honor. Forrest Gump fictitiously got a Congressional Medal of Honor, if you remember. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't James Stockdale and Bob Kerrey also get Congressional Medals of Honor?
I'm not sure about Kerry. I thought Stockdale did.
I'm thinking Kerry did too. Bob Kerrey, not Kerry, but right. Bob Kerrey of Nebraska. And like I told your screener too, I said maybe Trump was confusing the Congressional Medal of Honor with the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
No, I truly believe he wanted to view himself as a hero, a war hero. You know, he wanted to. He knows what those medals are. That's one of those.
Well, you also remember, but you got to remember too. In 2016, when he was running, didn't a veteran give him a fake Purple Heart? And he said, "I always wanted one of these."
Yep.
So you know, and then J.D. Vance. Oh my gosh, I swear, I'm definitely voting for my Congressman Tim Ryan for the U.S. Senate. Let me tell you.
As I hope everyone in Ohio does. Tim Ryan's a good guy.
Exactly.
He's a good working class guy from Youngstown. Good family background. I think would be fabulous in the Senate. Someone like J.D. Vance and the craziness that's come out of his mouth. Please, Ohio, my former state, find your sanity.
Well, get this, Rick. The guy is in Israel campaigning right now.
Oh, he's trying to make some money. He's trying to pay off his debts because he's kind of in hock, I guess, right now, isn't he?
I thought he was a billionaire that Donald Trump was supporting.
Vance?
I thought he was a Silicon Valley billionaire.
No, not Vance.
I thought he was a Silicon Valley billionaire.
No, he wrote that stupid book, Hillbilly Elegy.
And I never read the book. But I will be reading the one that guy that you had last week wrote about the colleges.
That would be a good book.
The one about the falling down of the Ivory Tower. But I mean, when did the state of Israel become part of the state of Ohio? Is what I want to know.
Well, there's some interesting things going on in the backgrounds around that, which is there there's some weird stuff going on around crushing the progressive movement in this country, and there it's
And I'm not
interesting.
knocking the Israelis, and I'm not knocking.
No, it's not knocking
The
Israel, but
Israelis are very,
it's trying to figure out how to quell the Democratic parties, getting the people uprising and saying, hey, we deserve better wages, hours, conditions. We deserve better opportunities for our kids, our seniors, we do our workers, all of that stuff.
And this is funny. I started working in Medicaid 20 and a half years ago, January 14th, 2002. I started working in Medicaid. And I was making maybe $9.17 an hour back in 2002. And this is with a private company, not the state of Ohio. And I was living in the city of Fair Lawn, which was a suburb of Akron. And I had a one-bedroom apartment, a living room, a bathroom, kitchen, all that stuff. I would venture to say it was less than 800 square feet. I was paying $535 a month for that apartment, living by myself. I'm living in a house now where I'm paying pretty much less for my mortgage than I did for that rent 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is, I thought, I want to just look and see what that same apartment goes for today. That apartment, same layout, I don't know if it's the same unit, but the same layout, $945
Yep,
a month.
and the minimum
now.
wage hasn't gone up a dime since then. Yeah, it's
I think
crazy.
it's $825 or $835 in the state of Ohio. But like I said, my mortgage is less than $600 a month, and I got a 3-bedroom, 2-story. And I'll have something after I pay it off.
Yep, good stuff, Kurt. Appreciate the call, man. I got to move on. I got one more I got to get to before
All
the
right,
break.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Let's go to Alice on line 2. Alice, how are we doing today? I got about a minute here. What's going on?
The only thing I wanted to say is this. The Republicans are passing or trying to pass or planning on passing all these restrictive medieval ideas. But I just thought of this. Well, once they outlaw the contraception and we're already second-class citizens, we will have some form of gun control. I will lay you odds that the first woman that shoots a rapist or her husband because he's beating her, they will pass a law that no woman will be allowed to buy a gun or own one.
I don't doubt it, because we can't have mouthy women like you around.
That's exactly right.
We got to put you back in your place, Alice. No more.
I'll tell them like I told my husband when we got married 30-some years ago. Just remember the first time you tell me my place is in the kitchen, that there's iron skillets, rolling pins, and knives, and I know how to use all of them.
That is fabulous. Thanks, Alice. I appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
Good stuff. Look, that's all right. I got to tell you, it's all right to be going. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Erica Payne from Patriotic Millionaire is going to be here to talk a little bit about minimum wage. It's been 13 years. Can you believe it? 13 years since the federal minimum wage was last raised. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1944. That was the day Local 212 UAW workers at Briggs returned to work. Briggs was directly involved in war production. 3,000 workers on 2 shifts made ball turrets for heavy bombers. Workers on both shifts walked off the job when management at the Outer Drive plant carried out a series of transfers and layoffs while expecting the same level of production. It had been the second walkout in a week. Management set a precedent of refusing to settle grievances of any kind. They routinely snubbed the union, insisting that they take any and all grievances to the War Labor Board. Local 212 President Jess Ferraza noted that it would take anywhere from 12 to 18 months to get a grievance processed. Workers were fed up with waiting. He added, quote, "It was like a fireman with a water bucket running around trying to put fires out. Management never cooperated. If the grievance were a justifiable one, they would not settle it. They would tell you to get the workers back to work. The strike came on the heels of a contentious state CIO convention earlier in the month. There, delegates debated the merits of the no strike pledge. Local 212 delegates were among a full third of the total delegates who made known their opposition to the pledge. Faraza argued that, quote, the no strike pledge has tied labor's hands, and as long as our hands are tied, the corporations will continue their attacks on labor. Briggs workers agreed to return to their jobs on the promise of direct settlement of grievances. They also geared up for the national CIO convention, intent on overturning the wartime no strike pledge. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Republican politicos are all over Joe Biden for failing to stop inflation. Perhaps you wonder, though, what these squawkers would do if they were in charge. No need to wonder. Just look back to 1974, when Americans were being pummeled by price spikes that topped 12%, nearly double what we're enduring today. But by gollies, President Gerald Ford and his Republican contingent in Congress met the challenge head-on with a new magical program of economic uplift they called WIN, Whip Inflation Now. But it was nothing, just a political slogan with no magic and no action behind it. Price controls, antitrust action? No. GOP Inc. didn't want to offend, much less punish, corporate titans for a little profiteering. So they shifted the blame for inflation to consumers, demanding that families just say no to price gouging. Ford himself went on national TV, urging fellow citizens to join him in buying, quote, only those products and services priced at or below present levels. The core of the Republican program, then, was telling hard-hit wage earners to battle the monopolistic behemoths of big oil, big pharma, big food et al. On their own by simply refusing to pay inflated prices for the gasoline, medicines, groceries, and such that, hello, they had to have. As a reward, everyone who signed a form promising to be an inflation fighter was sent a nifty win button indicating their patriotic participation. Sure enough, Americans responded enthusiastically with an avalanche of ridicule. Even Ford's top economic advisor was whopper-jawed by the GOP's idea that the substance of their policy was a political button. It was surreal. I said to myself, this is unbelievable stupidity.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So 13 years since the last increase in the minimum wage. Think about that for a second. We have had 2 presidents in a row and only 3 presidents in the history of the minimum wage to not increase that minimum wage. It was 8 years during the Reagan administration, 8 years during Obama, and 4 years during Trump. This totally unacceptable. And the reality is, you stop and you think about the kind of wage theft that this is. I mean, we've got a situation where we've got people shooting themselves into space to get away from paying the minimum wage. It's crazy. And here to share some thoughts on just how bad things are for working people, I've asked Erica Payne to come talk with us. Erica is the founder of Patriotic Millionaires. You can check out their website at patrioticmillionaires.org. Erica, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here.
So 13 years, they told us, now this is where they told us, if we raise the minimum wage, Erica, inflation is going to go through the roof. And yet inflation went through the roof and we still haven't raised the minimum wage because explain that to me because I'm struggling.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing. It's not even the 13 years. It goes back further than that. I mean, in 1968, the minimum wage was at its peak. And if it had been adjusted for inflation over just the last time since then, it would be around $14-15 an hour. And if it had been adjusted for productivity and inflation, it would be $22 an hour, $23 an hour. And so, I mean, what we basically, in the process of breaking the social compact, these wealthy CEOs have decided that the best way to, get what they need in the world is to make sure that regular working people don't get what they need. And it's a terrible way to run a country. It's a terrible way to run a business. And it's basically broken the connection that we all had between ourselves.
Yeah. Now, Dean Baker over at the Center for Economic Policy and Research, he says that it had kept up with just productivity, minimum wage would be about $26 an hour. So I keep going, where's that extra $18 an hour? Where'd that money go?
Right, it's going right in the pockets of the CEOs, the lobbyists who work for them, and a small number of investors who control most of the market.
So when I say that we have created the largest billionaire class in the history of civilization off the back of poor and low-wage workers, I would not be wrong, would I?
You would be 100% right. And we've been doing it for a really long time. And unless there's a serious intervention from working people on both sides of the political aisle, I really worry that we're not going to address it. The thing that's so dumb about it, Rick, too, is that we could build exactly the kind of country that basically all of us want to live in if we would just connect the engine of American prosperity business to the engine of prosperity for each and every single American family. And the easiest way to do that is to raise the federal wage floor. So people are required to have their employees take part in the profits of the company, and the employees are what get them the profits in the first place. I mean, this is kind of basic.
It is kind
of
basic.
It's so sad that we're arguing about stuff this basic.
It is basic, but what you end up getting into, and this is where it's amazing to me how well and how easy it is for the wealth class to divide the working class. Jay Gould is the one who's given credit for saying, I could easily pay half the working class to murder the other half. Whether he said it or not, for me, is immaterial. It's the statement that matters, because I look at this as being one of those issues. Someone making, $15 an hour goes, oh, how can you raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour? I only make $15 an hour, without thinking that, gee, maybe your wages might go up a little bit too.
No, it's not that they'll go up a little bit. I mean, here's the thing, Rick. This is the thing that I think is freaking me out about the entire exercise. Slightly less than 50% of people in America work in low wage jobs. So all of those people are affected by the minimum wage. If you raise the minimum wage by, up to where it ought to be $15 an hour, that guy making 15 now is going to be making 25. It's not going to be a small increase. You raise that federal wage floor, value working people the way this country should value working people, and you're going to start to see people up and up the chain making more money. And eventually those billionaires are going to have to admit that this is a better business model for everybody, for the economy in general. And they're going to have to, maybe they can't afford a rocket.
Or a second rocket. Maybe they can have one.
Or a second rocket.
Maybe they can have one rocket.
Or a baby yacht to push along your big yacht.
Maybe an 80-foot rocket instead of a 100-foot.
Maybe. But no, I mean, here's the thing. I think one of the points of the patriotic millionaires, as our chairman always says, he's like, look, I'm not any more altruistic than the next guy. I'm just greedy for a different kind of country. And our members happen to believe they're all capitalists. They happen to believe that the best way to build a sustainable society, a sustainable economy in which they can make a lot of money, is to make sure that working people in America are making a whole bunch of money too.
Yeah, no, I saw a statistic earlier today that said 1 in 3 workers in this country are earning less than $15 an hour. So a raise in the minimum wage, and there is the Raise the Wage Act that would raise the minimum wage up to $15 an hour by 2025, and that can't get through, and it's not going to, or at least I don't think it is. Maybe you'll correct me here in a second.
But let me tell you why it's not going to get through, and I think that this is really important for people to understand. The working class is being screwed by both political parties. I mean, is one worse than the other? Yes. But neither one of them is doing what needs to be done. There are 8 Democrats right now who refuse to support the idea that a working person who works full time should make around 30 grand a year, $15 an hour. They refuse to support that idea. They even think that people who are in the service industry, who is mostly us ladies and a whole bunch of people of color, that we should make $2 an hour, hoping that on the off chance a happy customer is going to slip us some cash in the form of a tip. That's what the Democratic Party, 8 of its members, believe in. And so, they're joining with all of their Republican colleagues. So how committed is the Democratic Party in general to working people? I'd say they've got a big problem.
Yeah. So who are our eight Republican-like Democrats? I mean, look, at the end of the day, my premise has always been right now, it appears that Republicans hate working people. The Democrats aren't always my best friend either, but at this moment, they're my only hope because Republicans have shown me time and time again that they're not going to help. They've attacked my right to organize. They've attacked my health care. They've attacked my retirement. They've attacked social. Go down the list of everything they want to take away. They want to repeal the 20th century and move me back to the Lochner era, where if I'm hungry enough, desperate enough, and that I'll work for poverty wages in desperate conditions, that's my liberty. That's my right. They give me no hope. Democrats at least try and talk like maybe I've got hope. How can we push people to go, hey, you eight, get in line? Who are
Well,
these?
and here's the thing. I mean, this is one of the great victories of the moment. As bad as everything feels right now, this fight for 15 didn't start but about 8 years ago. And political change takes a long time. President Biden ran on and won on a $15 minimum wage. He could not have been more straightforward about what he wanted to accomplish. That his Democratic colleagues are holding him up. So we've got a suggestion for President Biden. You need to lead by example. These folks who are working for the federal government and for people who contract the federal government live the values you want to see in the world. We challenge President Biden to raise the pay of federal contract workers to $20 an hour and start to make up that gap that started in the 70s and 80s between what people are contributing and what they're making. We've got a gap. We need to fill that gap, and President Biden can lead by example. We really urge him to do that. And then to demand those 8 Democrats get in the room and work out a deal.
Yeah, didn't he at the beginning of his presidency raise it up to 15?
He did 100%, and it was a great bright spot. He led by example at that point, and we've got inflation, admittedly, completely out of control. Those people working need an inflation bump.
No, I'm right there with you. No, I'm right there with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Erica Payne. She's the founder of the Patriotic Millionaires. Patrioticmillionaires.org is their website if you want to take a look at the work that they do. They've got a fantastic book, Tax the Rich. I highly suggest taking a look at that. We'll get links out on social media on how you can take a look at that. Now, this again, I want to go back to the 8, the heavy 8 there. Do we know?
Let's name them. Let's name them and shame them.
Absolutely. Okay? Who are they?
Maggie Hassan and Jean Shaheen, senators from New Hampshire, where the poorest county in New Hampshire, if you want to lead any kind of a stable life, requires $15 an hour. If you have a kid, it requires $25. That's in their poorest county in New Hampshire. Those two women refuse to get on this bill. John Tester from Montana, Chris Coons and Tom Carper from Delaware, both of whom are very close to President Biden. So that leads me to believe that the White House hadn't leaned on them quite as hard as they should have. Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, always going to be a complete pain in the neck, and Angus King from Maine. Okay, I will say that Joe Manchin from West Virginia is senator of the poorest state, and he seems to believe that $11 is enough for his folks. I think that is ridiculous. West Virginia deserve better.
I'm with you,
but Joe Manchin wants to give them.
Is this a moment where we maybe start talking about something different than a minimum wage, perhaps? I like the idea of a prevailing wage. I look at my construction friends who have gone to a prevailing wage system to where maybe we start making people report their wages. We make these employers start reporting it. We start mandating a prevailing wage. We're saying this is what the minimum for this industry and this sector is going to be. And instead of, across the board blankets, where we then take that talking point, well, a minimum wage in New York City is different than a minimum wage in Dubuque. And that's true. Cost of livings are different. Is that something you might be interested in?
So here's the thing, Rick. I think that there are any number of ways to hit this wage issue. Definitely. In other countries, they do it. They operate in, chunks of industries. They negotiate in that industry. What we basically want to see is working people in America have a significant amount of additional power and money. Okay. That's what we're looking for. Working people with more power and more money. The cleanest, easiest way to accomplish that for probably about 30 to 40% of our workforce just off the bat.
Here it comes.
Is to raise the prevailing federal wage.
Okay. I thought you were going to go the union route, because me as a union guy, that's what I want to. I think every worker should be in a union. I think you should sit down with the employer, and I want companies to be wildly profitable, so that I
You
could
know what,
I could
Rick?
demand the most.
Listen, that's definitely, listen, the fact that the unions have been attacked for so many years is why working people are in the place that they're in right now too, because they lost that collective power. What I'd like to see is a $15 federal minimum wage. I'd actually like to see $18 to $20 federal minimum wage, but we'll get to that. And every person be part of a collective bargaining agreement. I mean, the working people of the United States need to band together. They can be a union in themselves. They just have to decide that they want to take power away from the people who've been taking it from them for so many decades.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, I've been very fortunate in my work life. I've always been a member of a union. I've always felt empowered in my workplace to demand better wages, better hours, better working conditions, to demand more from my employer. And I want everyone to feel that they have the ability to do that, and demand a better standard of living. But the sad reality is, over the last 40 years, we've been trained over almost like Pavlovian dogs. That anytime we talk about wages, we talk about increase in asking for a raise, we almost start getting jittery, and people start foaming at the mouth. And I'm like, now is a time where we should be demanding. Look, we got a guy, who. They got two guys shooting rockets into space to see whose rocket's bigger or more phallic, because they can, because they've figured out how to get more tax dollars by not paying our taxes, by figuring out the latest great crime by not paying taxes. And you go, when do we wake up from this?
Well, listen, about 70% of Americans think the economy is rigged against them.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, so they're in on the scam. The problem is that they're divided enough amongst themselves that they can't seem to pull their power together to topple over the elite class that is sucking all the money out of them. Okay. And taking the lifeblood out of them at the same time. And so, I mean, what we just want to say, it's also a great economic idea. I mean, what does a bar owner care more about? How much he's paying one bartender behind the bar, or how much every single one of his customers has in their pocket. The end. I'd rather have 30 customers making $15 an hour with that beer money in their pocket on a Friday night, and pay my bartender $15 with tips on top. That's a net positive for me. People going out having a great time because they got a little money in their pocket. People want to participate in the economy. They want to participate in life. They want to go out to Chuck E. Cheese with their kids. Get some dollars in those pockets and get those businesses running.
Yeah, here's a novel concept. Disposable income. Something we haven't thought about in a long time.
Ever thought about dispose, because nobody has any more to dispose of except for these people who are disposing it into a rocket. And the thing is, in the process, it's destroying our country. And I'm getting really sick of it because it's just dumb. I mean, this is to the point where there's every single bit of data, because here's the thing. States have been trying this. Cities have been trying this. Counties have been trying this. We have experimented in the great lab that is the American experiment. We have experimented with paying people more. And guess what? It turns out great. Academic study after academic study has shown that if you put two places right next door to each other, one paying a livable one wage, one not, businesses do better in the place with the livable wage. That's it. That's why minimum wage, raising the minimum wage, is the single most popular issue in America today. In the last 20 years, 100% of ballot initiatives raising the minimum wage have passed, including in conservative states like Alabama. Tom Cotton won his re-election campaign the same year a minimum wage ballot initiative to $12 an hour passed. And now that jerk has a bill on the floor, a federal wage that'll raise it to $11 4 years from now. So he basically wants to give the people of Alabama a pay cut with the bill that he's pushing. They've already told him what they want.
Yeah, it's not surprising. And at the end of this, what is kind of shocking is our friends, especially on the Republican side, lots of outrage, lots of hate. In fact, we just saw the weekend rally that you saw in Florida, the Turning Points USA, lots of lights and flash and lots of hate and division. Not much on how to make people's lives better. And with all of this division, hate the guy over there because he's left, hate that Democrat, hate your neighbor. What they figured out is if they can keep us pitted against each other, eating each other, they don't have to talk about the tough stuff, like how are we going to make your lives better? How are we going to improve your communities? How are we going to get your kids better education? How are we going to get your families better health care? How are we going to improve your standards of living? Because what we know is conservative states have, much more dangerous workplaces, lower life expectancies, higher infant mortality rates. You can go down the list of the negatives that you see in these conservative states that have lower wages and all of this stuff, and yet we're still eating each other.
Well, I mean, it's so deep, Rick. I mean, these conservative states, we did a visit to West Virginia at the end of last year, because I don't know why people are surprised that guy walked away from this negotiation. But at the end of last year, I told my staff that guy is not passing anything. And so I just wanted to go talk to some people in West Virginia. Like, what do you think of this cat? Right. And so I go to West Virginia with some of our members and a bunch of our staff people. We literally stood in the parking lot of Dollar General and stopped people coming out of Dollar General and asked them about what they think about the tax code, what they know about the tax code, and then what they thought about Joe Manchin and what they thought about work and stuff and what they thought about how the economy is working. 100% of people we talk to know that they are getting a raw deal. They know that people need to make more money. They know that the billionaire class hadn't paid a tax worth a damn in decades, and Joe Manchin's part of that. We saw the same thing in Kentucky. But I think at some point, Rick, you get so tired and so hopeless, you just don't want to hear another person spouting endless promises.
Yep.
And so that's what the Democrats have done. They dragged themselves over the finish line, selling higher taxes on rich people and a $15 minimum wage, and they failed. They failed. And so what they need to do now is pick progress out of this, and Biden needs to lead by example and set that federal wage floor for at least for people who work for this country that we love. Those people need to make $20 an hour. I'll see you 15. I raise you 20, Tom Cotton. Or you want to give the people in Alabama a pay cut.
And how do we make that happen? How do we get the president's ear? What's the final word? How do we get that little piece moving to get the rest of the ball going?
So go to the Patriotic Millionaires website, and by tomorrow morning I will have some way for you. We have it. We have the number, Rick. I can't remember the number. I'm so sorry. We will find the number.
We'll get it out on social media here soon.
Okay, good. Thank you. Put it on Twitter. Raise the wage, Joe Biden. $20.
There you go. We'll make sure that we get that out, and folks will be able to participate. But really good stuff, Erica. I appreciate you taking a little time for us. The work you guys do over at Patriotic Millionaires is so important, and we need more of it. We need more of what you're doing, so keep it up, and I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
Rick, thank you so much. It was great being here with you.
Thanks so much. Our good friend Erica Payne. She's the founder of Patriotic Millionaires. Make sure you check out their website, patrioticmillionaires.org. Again, we'll get links out on social media. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. What are your thoughts? Should we raise the minimum wage? Or do you think it's just fine right where it is? Starvation, poverty, wages? Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1898. That was the day that the United States Armed Forces invaded Puerto Rico. The invasion was part of the Spanish-American War. In 1898, the U.S. State Department noted, quote, "It seems to be conceded that every year we shall be confronted with an increasing surplus of manufactured goods for sale in foreign markets if American operatives and artisans are to be kept employed year-round." Many business leaders in the U.S. clamored for market expansion. At the time, Spain was still a colonial presence in the Caribbean and Pacific. When a revolution in Cuba sought to drive out the Spanish, in the United States, the drumbeats for war began to boom. Many saw this as an opportunity to expand the U.S. sphere of influence, although some labor leaders warned against war. One official from the Longshoremen's Union warned working people, quote, "If there is a war, you will furnish the corpses and the taxes, and others will get the glory." But soon labor leaders, including the president of the American Federation of Labor, Samuel Gompers, got swept up in the war fever. In just a few months, the U.S. ousted the Spanish and became the colonial power in not only Puerto Rico, but also Guam and the Philippines, as well as Hawaii. This gave the United States footholds in the Caribbean and the Pacific. The small island of Puerto Rico remains a U.S. territory to this present day. Since the U.S. invasion, there have been movements for both Puerto Rican independence and also for full U.S. statehood. Today, the Puerto Rican people face a severe economic crisis, towering debt, and an unemployment rate more than double that of the United States. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. That website is over at actionnetwork.org. Letter to President Biden to tell him to deliver now for working people. Just one of the, we'll get it out on social media to let people know. You know, the red states, you got Montana, Arkansas, Alaska, Nebraska, South Dakota, ones that they're going after. Colorado, Illinois, Oregon, Washington, blue states, swing states of Florida, Ohio, Arizona, Nevada. So if you're in those areas, by all means, reach out to your senators. Say, hey, you know, we need some movement. And look, Pennsylvania hasn't raised its minimum wage since 2006. It's still $7.15 on the books here in Pennsylvania, but because the federal minimum wage is $7.25, got that whole 10-cent raise. Oh boy. And the thing is, I don't know how anyone exists on $7.25. In fact, as I said, there is nowhere in this country that you can rent an apartment for $7.25 an hour and 40-hour work week. There's just nowhere now. After this, coming out of the pandemic, there is literally nowhere. Before the pandemic, there was nowhere to rent a 2-bedroom apartment. I think it was like in 7% of the counties across the U.S., you could rent like a studio apartment or a 1-bedroom apartment. You could maybe find something. Now, nothing. And this again is one of those moments where inflation keeps going up and the minimum wage has just been completely eaten away. And that happened back during the Reagan years. Those 8 years, the minimum wage just got decimated. And then Republicans were successful in holding off the Democrats from doing anything during the Obama term because, hey, they just raised it a paltry amount at the end of the Bush term. And the last time it raised was in 2009 when Obama took office, and they couldn't get back to getting it done again. And those 8 years were gone. The 4 years during Trump, we've had 13 years of people who get up every day and work for a poverty starvation wage. And you go, but no, Rick, you just got to increase your skills. A third of workers in this country make less than $15 an hour. A third. That is a structural problem. That is a structural problem of workers not having enough power. But, and this is what I love. I love the economists' arguments. But, if you raise the wage, they'll lose jobs. Maybe, but the reality is that hasn't borne out. In the places where minimum wages have gone up, jobs have actually gone up a little bit because, you know what? People had more money. There's more money circulating in the economy because, as Erica pointed out, would you rather have more customers who have more disposable income in your establishments? Yes. And I think back to an economist I had on the program, probably 15 years ago. He said, look, if you give a rich person the choice between a $20,000 tax break and 20,000 people coming into his establishment with money, he'd better take the 20,000 people coming in with money because that's how jobs are created. Because that's a guy wanting to meet the demand. That's how business works. If you give him the 20 grand, he's just going on vacation. And that, my friends, is what our billionaire class has done. They've been on vacation for a long time. You want to talk about welfare queens and kings? There they are, living off the backs of working people. Sad, sad stuff.
We're already committed to a level of warming, and these extremes will get more extreme in the future.
Cascading consequences are piling up. Scientists warn it will get worse.
Russia is blackmailing us. Russia is using energy as a weapon.
EU warns member nations to conserve gas as Russia tightens its grip. Plus,
climate change is literally an existential threat. to our nation and to the world.
Biden announces plans for executive actions to tackle climate change.
All of those plans and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
It's not just Europe, because over 100 million people in the U.S. are under heat alerts. In fact, this week, nearly 20% of the U.S. population will likely see a temperature at or above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember when you wished that everybody who denied climate change would go to hell? Unfortunately, hell came to us.
Welcome to hell, or as we like to call it, your green news.
KCAA Loma Linda, 10